Welcome back to RBR, guys. It's always fun when we have an automotive icon to review on the channel, especially one that's been updated to its best possible version in a generation. Now, the Performance Saloon segment is perhaps one of the most viciously fought in the entire car industry, and the most infamous champion of this segment has to be BMW's M5. It probably all started back with the E12 with the M535i, but more infamously perhaps with the E28 M5, which shared the M88 engine with the M1, really making a statement. And ever since then, it has been the automotive icon for the Performance Saloon. And now we have the best version of this generation. It is the new M5 Competition LCI. What does LCI mean? It means Life Cycle Impulse, which is the stupidest name in the world for facelift. Regardless, they're looking to address some of the main issues that myself and other journalists had with the original M5 competition of this generation, while adding tech to bring it in line with the rest of BMW's current lineup. So let's see if they've done a good enough job in this, the brand new M5 competition. So things haven't been as easy for the M5 in recent times compared to its heyday, with manufacturers like Porsche and AMG making some really special cars to battle the M5. We recently drove one of them, like the Panamera Turbo S, which was an absolute beast in terms of pure speed, dynamism, and it had a really good luxury side to it as well. AMG have recently updated the new E63S, which is now less hard riding than it used to be. It's got looks borrowed from the GT63S, which are a bit Marmite, but the entire package a little bit more attractive to buyers. Then you've got internal rivals like the M8 Competition that we recently drove as well, which we found to be that much better in terms of riding for luxury purposes, while maintaining dynamism that was perhaps even better than the M5. And then cars like the GT63S really complicating things in the space. Now, I really like the original M5, the non-competition version. It had 600 brake horsepower, suspension that was very livable, and it managed to balance that act that a Super Saloon needs to do very carefully of being a really dynamic car with good power, but maintaining the daily elements. Now, I thought the original E63S rode really hard, as many people did, but I didn't understand what hard riding was till I drove the M5 Competition. Now, you need to have your chiropractor on speed dial #1 on the interior buttons on this car, because that thing rode bloody hard. Now, I'm used to cars with stiff suspension, as you guys know, but this thing, having added just 5% brake horsepower, it detracted too much with the amount that the suspension was stiff in comparison. So luckily, BMW M have taken that as a main point in the update of this LCI and looked to address it. So BMW M haven't had to mess with the power output. It's still got 625 brake horsepower, 750 Newton meters of torque, and a 0 to 60 of 3.3 seconds, maintaining its position as a car that's more powerful than the E63 and the RS6. You've still got the standard M5 underneath with 600 brake horsepower and slightly slower 0 to 60. What they've done is instead focus on the main negative that everyone had, and that was the harsh riding suspension. And what they've done is take the adaptive dampers from the brilliant M8 competition and put them into this M5, along with some chassis tweaking as well. Also, as they did on the M8 and the M2 CS, they've improved the engine lubrication and the oil cooling to be better for track driving and lateral dynamics. And finally, on the comp, you now get lighter M compound brakes, which are either finished in red, gloss black, or the standard blue, which are probably a better option than the eye-wateringly expensive ceramics that we have on our test car today. So that is it in terms of technical changes. The rest comes down to design, and it might be a case of blink and you'll miss it. The most significant parts are on the front end. First, you've got a larger grille that seems to sit a little bit lower. It's got a more joined middle section, and you've got different bars now, which are like a double bar design with almost like an L-shaped bar alongside a straight one. So it makes it a bit more distinctive compared to the last one. You've got new air intakes. These intakes are actually a completely different shape. The bumper is completely different versus the pre-facelift. You see you've got these gloss black details within the two side intakes. Compared to the previous car, I think it looks less aggressive on the lower half of the bumper. I think the previous one had a more open look, and this looks a little more sedate. Though what I do like is the new lights. I think they're really nice. I like the L-shape graphic within them. You've got the blue detail, which a bit marmite for me, but you can also get a shadow line version, which is a darker headlamp, which is really, really nice. The rest of the side of the car, completely the same as the previous car, but the rear, again, you've got a completely different rear bumper, which again might be blink or miss it because the lower diffuser is exactly the same. But what I do love is the rear tail lights. Again, the lights are lovely. They're really, really dark apart from the inner graphic within them. And on a spec like this, you really, really notice it, and it looks really quite fantastic. So, subtle tweaks on the M5, but perhaps you should be grateful because imagine if they did this. Some of you will never sleep again. That is going to be ingrained in your memory. It could be your next M5. I should have told little children to look away, shouldn't I? So, be thankful. This is your M5, and it's a pretty standard looking BMW M car. Now, if standard isn't for you, you can get some M Performance parts that are both aesthetic and some that actually add to the performance. So you can get a new coilover setup that changes the ride height from anything between 5 and 20 millimeters. So you can actually have a lower center of gravity, which is better for cornering. And you also get some carbon fiber add-ons on both the front and an aggressive rear spoiler. And finally, you can get the 863 wheels as well as an option on this car. Now, we also know that there is a CS model coming, as they've been teasing on Instagram. It was our last video on the channel, so do check it out. Essentially, it's got 10 brake horsepower more. It's 70 kg lighter, thanks to the use of carbon fiber reinforced plastic in a lovely new bonnet with air vents. It's got 4 track-specific seats, the front ones being carbon, like in the new M4, and some lovely unique yellow lights and gold bronze details everywhere. Do check out that video, guys. Now, let's take a look at the little changes that they've done in the interior to bring it up to spec with the rest of the M lineup and see what the car sounds like in this LCI version. So guys, when I mentioned the tech coming back in line with the rest of the BMW lineup, I was talking more about the interior and specifically related to how the car is now closer to the M8 competition in some key significant areas. For example, we've got the much larger BMW infotainment screen in front of us now. This is, again, it's still touchscreen as it used to be. It's the latest version. It's increased by around about 2 inches, actually quite a big difference compared to the previous one. I didn't think it would be, but it's significantly more screen real estate than you had before. There's a lot of pre-installed apps in there. You still get Apple CarPlay, which is wireless, and Android Auto as well, which is very, very useful. One thing I really like is how you can customize different home screens. It's kind of like something you'd find in modern Porsches as well. So I've set up a specific one with sports displays and the M setup menu, so you can change your bits on the fly while you're driving. Now, I saw a TikTok thing going around of a squeaky 5 Series or M5 interior, and I'm pushing this and really nothing's happening. You get more squeaks and stuff coming out of the E-Class, I think. I think it's really built like a tank. You've got merino leather everywhere. The seats are fantastic, as they were in the previous M5. I still hate the steering wheel. I mean, it looks like it belongs in just an X7, no other car. It's so fat, it's so unyieldy. I like the M1 and M2 buttons still, but compared to, say, the steering wheel on my M2 CS, which is lovely and small, I think that was the best steering wheel that they ever made, BMW, and a lot of manufacturers copied them on that one as well. This one I just don't like. What is nice though, the driver zone has now got different displays like the M8 had. So when you go into the M Sport mode, you get a different centralized display. I love the fact you can see the color of the car in the OS. It's such a small thing, but as I said every time, I love these little details. Now, speaking of the M mode, this area has changed. We've got less buttons, and now we have a specific M mode and a setup button, just like in the M8. So M mode will take you from either road to sport to track, and that changes your displays all around. So when you go from road to sport, it changes to that centralized display. And when you go from sport to track, it turns off this display completely and the heads up in order to give you no distractions while driving, which is really good. Setup menu now replaces the plethora of buttons that you used to have here, and you can change all of your engine, chassis, steering, etc. from the screen in front then, which is really good. And I love the fact that you still have this here. I don't like the stalks that you find in E-classes, etc. I just think they're horrible. You still have the weird shortcut keys though, as I mentioned. Straight out of the 90s. You guys still insist that you like them, I just don't. The AC control at the bottom is a little LED screen. It's okay, but again, it looks very 90s. I do like the fact that this is kind of curved towards you though, so that's a nice little touch. In the rear, we've actually got rear entertainment package in this, and you'll see I've popped a car seat in the back, and there's some decent leg room in the rear, so decent rear space as well. Now, let's listen to what this car sounds like with the OPF and all the current EU regulations. So yeah, it's been severely hindered. If you compare it specifically to the last M5 competition, we'll talk about exhaust and the need for them when we go on the drive. So let's do that right now and see, has this M5 competition improved specifically with regards to suspension? Whoa, this is a quick car, the M5 competition. I mean, dare I say it, I think it feels quicker than even the M8 competition did. So as we said, not much has changed in terms of power or any other technical basis to do with the M5. So the last time I drove the competition, as I said, I found the power you got wasn't enough versus the trade-off of how stiff the suspension became for a proper 5-seater daily car. So I had concluded that I actually just preferred the standard M5 because it had enough power and you still maintained that balance that a performance saloon needs to have of luxury versus performance. Though the problem is, you always want the top dog, don't you? You want the competition. It looks better, it's got better alloy wheels, it's better appointed, it's got the bragging rights, you know, it's more powerful than the E63S and the RS6. It's the one you want. Now the nice thing is BMW do actually listen to their customers, and what they've done is, as we said, we've got the new shock absorbers from the M8, and when I drove the M8 I thought, wow, this is brilliant. It's still a competition, but it's really good at the GT thing. If you're just driving normally and you've got a full car of people, your passengers are really happy, the driver's really happy, and it's not a chore to do long miles or short journeys in. And I can see that immediately now in the M5 competition. Currently, I'm actually in sport in the suspension, so I'm not even in the most comfortable setting. And it's not that the car isn't behaving dynamically, it absolutely is. But what you've lost is that crashiness that I was talking about. Because it's fine to have suspension that is firm. What's horrible is to have something jarring. And that's what this is solved. It's still definitely as dynamic, but no longer are you second guessing whether you should take it out or putting the begging pants on to ask the missus if we can actually use the car. Which is exactly what was happening to me when I had the last competition press car. I wanted to drive it, but no one was really interested in sitting in it. So if we cool things off, I'll go into the M setup. Setup button is really useful, as I said. We can now go into here and I can just touch screen what I need. If we go into the comfort setting for everything for a minute, suddenly this becomes what I would have expected the original competition to do, and that is become a comfortable normal 5 Series. And that's what this is. Yes, it's still firm, but it's on the right side of firm for a performance car. I think you want a bit of that. What you don't want is to be spending money you don't have on your chiropractor. So that's very nice. Let's put everything back into the highest setting with the M2 button over here. Now, in terms of the steering, I think it's actually improved, you know. I had a bit of a moan last time because, like most recent BMWs that I've tried, except for the M8, I found the steering to be a bit vague. I think the M5 competition in the LCI is a little bit better. From what I understand, all 4 wheels have a bit more camber than before, which of course always helps a bit with steering feel, but I'd like to think that they have messed around with it after feedback because it's not quite as vague as it was before. I've got it currently in the sport setting, which seems to be better than it has been in the past. It's not as artificially heavy. It's just giving me a bit more of that feeling that I'm looking for. What's amazing about the M5 is how well it handles its weight and the lack of body roll. Of course, it sits a little bit lower than the standard M5, As we said, if we get the M Performance coilovers, it will go even lower, so you get a lower center of gravity, and you'll corner probably even flatter then. But I don't think you really need it. I'm on an exaggerated banking here, and it's flat as you like, and the X-Drive puts down the power so well when you're coming out of the corner. I mean, really, when you compare this to the RS6, it's on another level when it comes to dynamism. And of course, you've got the two-wheel drive option, which is brilliant as well, isn't it? Which the Audi just doesn't have. The main rival for this has to be the E63S. Panamera kind of comes into it as well, but I think the E-Class is the one you want to focus on. And versus the E63, well, it's certainly more comfortable now than the previous E63S. I haven't driven the new one yet, so I can't tell you what that's like, but it seems like a faster, more comfortable car, at least compared to the pre-facelift E63. The M5 is just supremely well sorted for a car of this size. The steering is much better than it used to be. It handles its size and weight in a really commendable fashion. And you can really enjoy the full power of the V8 once you're out of the corner. The MX Drive is brilliant. In terms of speed, it's so bloody fast. I mean, I've reached 140 miles per hour before even leaving here. I mean, look, I'm doing 70 miles an hour. Make that 100, just in like a fraction of a second. It's ridiculous how fast this thing is. And it's real usable power. It's all year round usable power. Now, in terms of sound, of course, OPF in this car, plus other EU regulations. As we saw, no pops and bangs on revs. I'm in the highest setting at the moment of Sport Plus. Downshifting doesn't give you any pops and bangs. Let's try again. Nothing. Overruns. Nothing. All you get is a rev, and of course it's augmented by the Bowers and Wilkins exhaust system through the speakers. Really, if you get this car, I would implore you to spend a little bit more money and go to someone like a Krapovich and get a proper, at least a rear system installed into this, so you can get some of that lovely sound that we got on the pre-facelift back into this car. Otherwise, the basis of it is great. I mean, it's more comfortable than the previous one. You've still got the right amount of power. I think increasing any more would be silly, and besides, we've got the CS for that. And then you can still enjoy the luxury element, which is great. You couldn't do that before. So is the M5 Competition back at the top of the ladder? I think at the moment, it probably is for me, all but for the stock sound. If it was my own money, I think I would still be looking at a pre-facelift normal M5. My decision hasn't changed in that. Either that or a pre-facelift E63 from 2017, because loud sound, at least if we're talking stock, enough power, enough of the normal technology. If you're looking to buy a new car though, king of the hill at the moment has to be this M5 Competition. I think it struggles against the Panamera, which is as fast, as dynamic, sounds better, and probably got a little bit better steering as well. I think more crucially, if you're looking for the best daily M car in terms of power, all year usability and luxury, the M5 Competition is now where it should have been originally. It's got the breadth of ability of doing the luxury side thanks to the new shock absorbers from the M8, and it maintains the dynamism that the previous comp had. The only downside to the whole thing is the sound, but you can fix that. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this full review of the M5 Competition. If you did, please do like, subscribe and share, and I'll see you guys next time.